Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation as it's happening. Also, if you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. And also make sure you click that notification button so that you can get the alerts as soon as we go live and participate in the conversation and the chat as it's going on. Anyway, make sure you do that. Also, please take a moment to visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It is a very cool place to go to find all sorts of Pro 2A swag. And know that every penny that you spend will go right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. That's fpcgear.com. All right, we all know it's presidential election time. We know that big things are happening, right? One of the things that's actually happened is Mr. Cory Booker, Spartacus himself, has decided that he has the answer, the 14-point answer as to how to address the issue of gun violence. And so I don't know if he's introducing this as legislation, because I haven't actually seen a bill be introduced. But he has this idea that if he is president, he is going to end gun violence forever. And here's a brief part of an interview that he did where he talks a little bit about the details of his 14-point plan.
All right, so let's talk about this new plan that you're rolling out today. It's a 14-point plan, and at the hallmark of the plan is this licensing program that you believe would prevent gun violence. Explain why.
Well, first of all, we have the evidence to know that it happens. But people need a license to drive a car. This is something that's very basic, and in states where it's done, and like Connecticut, gun violence dropped 40%. Suicides went down 15%. This is a simple common sense pathway to getting us to greater safety and security. If it's something that we can do for driving a car, it's something we should be able to do for owning a weapon as well.
You've promised also to close some loopholes on gun sales. Why do it that way as opposed to working on a bipartisan solution?
The way the NRA and gun manufacturers have done this is in an insidious way. They've actually literally made us change the lens of what is reasonable, as they've eroded just the common sense we have. Think about the Consumer Product Safety Commission that has exempted guns. There's more regulation now on toy guns than there are on actual guns. We've been letting them dictate the debate for too long. It's time that we dictate what is common sense in our country. The only people who should be concerned about the plan that I've put forward, not law-abiding gun owners, is criminals and the gun industry, which has been insidious in the way that they've been going about pushing laws that have undermined safety and common sense regulation, to the point that they're literally pushing Congress to starve the ATF to even enforce the laws that we have. If you live in communities like mine, where we see in America 100 people plus dying every single day to gun violence, ripping apart communities. I live in a low-income, inner-city, black and brown neighborhood where this is a daily fear that on the 4th of July, when fireworks go off, people talk about their kids showing signs of post-traumatic stress, hiding, anxiety, lying under the bed due to a firework. This is something that we have to all say enough is enough. To have what should be in a war zone, the number of people that are dying in America every single day. And so I'm coming at this full bore. Enough of this seeming to resign ourselves to this level of carnage in America. This is a common sense plan that the only people that should be worried are those people who seek to do wrong by Americans.
You've mentioned the NRA, the gun manufacturers, the gun lobby, the gun industry. You're up against some very powerful forces that, in the wake of what happened in Sandy Hook, in the wake of Parkland, in the wake of Columbine, in the wake of so many horrific tragedies that have affected us, churches and mosques and synagogues that have been attacked, yet we still have some of the most least restrictive gun laws in the Western world. Why do you think you're going to be able to change that?
Because to me, and it's not just me, it's us. This is very much like the civil rights movement to me, where people said, oh, civil rights legislation kept dying in the Senate. The longest filibuster ever, Strom Thurmond's racist rant against civil rights legislation in the face of Birmingham bombings, in the face of Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner dying in Mississippi for voting rights. People did not give up. They doubled down. They expanded the moral imagination of this country. We have to understand that this is to the core of who we say we are, a nation that believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is being devastated. Life, the freedom from fear.
Okay, so there's so much there to break down. I don't even know where to begin. So before we get into the details of the plan, let's just break a couple of things down. Number one, you notice he didn't talk about any of the real 14 points of his 14-point plan, because quite frankly, and I searched his website, there's no 14-point plan, or at least there's nothing that he is talking about that is brand new. Like there's nothing that he's talking about that's brand new. So that's issue number one. Number two, when he talks about the gun lobby and what the quote unquote gun lobby has done, he treats it as if it's this massive, huge, industrial thing. And really, the gun lobby is you and I. It's individuals who believe in the fundamental right to keep and bear arms. It's individuals who own firearms, or maybe want to eventually one day own firearms, or at least just respect the ability and the right to own a firearm. We're the individuals. We are the gun lobby. We're the ones that make up the contributions, the overwhelming percentage of the contributions. We're the ones making the phone calls. We're the ones that support the organizations like the Firearms Policy Coalition that actually make this stuff happen. Now, let's go back to, and I just wanted to hit on at least a couple of the points of his 14-point plan. One of the things that he wants to do is he wants to have a national gun licensing program. Now, this basically would mean that instead of you having a right to be able to go purchase a firearm, or you going to purchase a firearm and in some cases having to do a background check, what this would require is that before you can go purchase a firearm, you have to get a permit to do so. Now, for those of you who do not know what a permit is, it's when the government takes your rights and then sells it back to you. It makes you pay and go through a bureaucratic process in order to get your rights back. And that is, in fact, what this is. Now, if you talk to folks who live in places like New York, or people who live in places like New Jersey, where they have these sorts of permitting schemes, what they will tell you is that you are largely at the whim. It's not treated like a right. You are at the whim of whoever makes the decision. In most of these cases, it's local law enforcement. And there are individuals who have been waiting for years in order to be able to get a permit, in order to be able to defend themselves at home. There are instances of individuals who literally have gone and applied for permits because their lives were in danger, and it turns out they wound up getting killed or they wound up getting attacked before they could ever exercise that fundamental right, before they ever got a chance to get a firearm to defend themselves. In some cases, you have some municipalities where, quite frankly, you have to be in the midst of being attacked in order for them to believe that you are actually in a position where you need to own a firearm. And by the way, it's got nothing to do with need. It's about a right. And it's not about whether or not you should not have a gun because you are a felon, or because you've been convicted of domestic violence, or because you suffer from a mental illness, or any of those other reasons. In many cases, it's just because they don't believe you need one. That is the sort of process that Mr. Booker, Spartacus, is in favor of. Now, the challenging part also about that is that, once again, as you go through this permitting process, a lot of times there's no real standard. You're not really given a standard as to what designates whether you should or you shouldn't. Now, who's going to decide whether or not you are going to be approved? Is it going to be local law enforcement, which means you're going to have standards, much like we have with concealed carry in the state of California, where you have some states like Sacramento, where there's somewhere around 10,000 concealed carry permits, because the sheriff believes that as long as you are a law-abiding citizen and can pass a background check, the only real reason you need is self-defense. But then you have some municipalities like Los Angeles, where if you are a friend of the sheriff, or you work in law enforcement, or tangential to law enforcement, then you can get a permit. They have 198 permits issued there in Los Angeles County. Only 9 are not individuals who are connected to or work tangentially to law enforcement. Or you have places like San Francisco, where they just don't issue them, where there's only 4 in the entire county of San Francisco. So who's going to decide? What's the standard going to be? And see, that's the thing. Those are the devils in the details that this particular individual doesn't want to talk about. But the other thing that they want, once again, is they want the universal background check. Now, here's my question. If you can't get the universal background checks, what makes you think you're going to get a national license? Right? And by the way, with this license, it's probably also going to include a registry so that they can know exactly what firearms you own and when you own them. So that when and if they are eventually able to ban firearms, well, guess what they're going to do? That's right. They're going to come and they're going to take your firearms. Now, the other thing, the other major parts of his plan, he wants to ban assault rifles, which, by the way, there's no such thing. So I guess they're banning something that doesn't exist. Or, unless you're talking about banning semi-automatic centerfire rifles with detachable magazines, then that's their goal. That is one of the things that they, in fact, want to do. Now, we can forget the fact that, rifles as a whole are used in less than 3% of all gun crimes. And these quote-unquote assault rifles, but centerfire semi-automatic rifles are actually a small subset of that. So, one, these are not the guns that are being used in crimes, but we'll ignore that. Then they also want to limit handgun purchases, the number of handguns that an individual is, in particular, the number of handguns that are able to be purchased, and by the way, who is able to purchase handguns. And they don't really get into a lot of details as to who, except one of the things I think they do want to do is to include the quote, get rid of the quote, what they call the boyfriend loophole when it comes to domestic violence. I don't think most people, if someone is convicted of a felony, that they're against the idea. But when you start getting into misdemeanors, I'm sorry, I really do think that lifetime prohibitions for individuals who are convicted of misdemeanors, I don't care what the misdemeanor is. And if domestic abuse is that bad, I don't think it should be a misdemeanor. I think it should be a felony. Just saying. And by the way, yeah, that's the closing the abuser loophole. So clearly, Spartacus has decided that, he's going to hang his hat on this. This is one of the things. Now, mind you, this is an individual who he hasn't even registered. He hasn't even registered a blip on the presidential scale. In other words, he has absolutely no support for his candidacy for president. The very fact that he would sit up and say, well, I live in the hood and therefore I need guns. You can see all of the different stereotypes and all of the different victimization groups that he is playing to. But the fact is that I won't say that I live in the hood, but I do live in a low income neighborhood. I grew up in Richmond, California. I do a lot of work here in North Sacramento, which isn't the wealthiest neighborhood in the world. The school where I sit on the school board, the school district, it is 92% free and reduced lunch, which means that's low income. And I can tell you, the people that I talk to, they believe in the right to be able to defend themselves. Period. They want to be able to own and possess firearms in order to be able to protect and defend themselves. And it's not even a political ideological thing. So I really do think that Mr. Booker is barking up a wrong tree here. But once again, be aware. This is the sort of stuff that they are proposing. And he may not be elected president. Matter of fact, I sincerely doubt he will be elected president. But do not be surprised if you start to see these sorts of ideas. The idea, once again, of a national permit, right? Where law enforcement gets the chance to choose and decide, and it's at their discretion as to who gets a firearm. And I will promise you this, and this is the reason why, back in the day, the NRA was okay with local sheriffs doing it, was because if you give the local sheriff discretion, well, they're gonna be okay with us because we're the good guys, but they're gonna make sure that those people don't get guns. What you don't understand is, in many of these cases, in many of these municipalities, you and I, law-abiding citizens of all different shapes, sizes, and colors, all different ethnicities, all different religions, we, all of us together, are defined in their eyes as those people. And they want to make sure we don't have access to our right to keep and bear arms. So let's make sure that he doesn't get elected president. Okay? All right. Well, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing this program and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.